And that was another thing. I thought, I need to find somebody. My future partner is going to be somebody that's already been married, because they're going to be so burned on marriage. They're not going to be interested in getting married again. They're going to be interested in some kind of common law situation. And so we can just ride this wave a little bit longer because they've been disenchanted by the whole thing.
I haven't even really dated around a lot.
Yeah. And so that was one thing that was a little risky with us. So I'm like, you are not disenchanted with marriage. You want that. You want to experience that.
But I was also
Trainable.
You're listening to Shall We Unpack This? With your host, Leilani Carrasco.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sweat Podcast, coming to you live from my kitchen table where I'm wearing my robe, I've got my coffee, I have my puzzle. Like, we're on full-on summer mode here, guys. This is it. But I wanted to have my husband Tim on the show. We watched an episode a couple weeks ago of Conan O'Brien Must Go. And he went to Bergen, Norway, and talked with a local sex therapist about the dating scene and the concept of sex before coffee. And Tim was really curious about that. And so it just led to us having this really cool conversation, exploring more about what this means, this whole concept. And in the process led to another video that put into words so beautifully of why I did choose to get married after swearing it off forever. So let's go ahead and cut to the conversation. So we were trying to think of where this all started. We clicked on a Conan O'Brien show, and he was visiting Bergen, Norway, and he had an interview with like a sex expert or something talking about the dating culture and how their dating culture kind of has this known concept of sex before coffee. What I took from it was no pressure, kind of hookup culture. If you guys hook up at night and you want to get to know each other the next day, then you go out for coffee. If you don't want to get to know them, you don't go out for coffee. That was what I got. Is that kind of how you saw it?
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Okay. You were kind of thinking about that concept for a few days. So talk about why that was in your head, or why that bothered you or mattered to you so much.
It was interesting, an interesting concept. There was a sort of almost a fascination that I had with the concept, the idea that, you can just go out and meet somebody and then go have sex with them. That leads to questions like, what about, STDs, and how does that play out? I mean, we watched that one other show, Dating Beyond Borders, and we learned,
it's an issue.
STDs are on the rise.
Yeah. It didn't even faze me because I had a completely different mindset when we first met. And so we met on Hinge, a dating site. And I was really just on the site to show myself that I could be fully myself, say exactly what I need and want, what I'm not interested in, put it out there, be very honest, not in like a screw you kind of way, but like, I can't deny that I'm not into kids, not into dogs, not into religion. If you're into those things and need a partner that wants those things, I'm not your person. It felt really refreshing to just be right up front and honest. And another part of that was when we started to date, I wanted to put it out there right away, just test the waters, test the concept of be honest as possible. And if they can handle it, they're your person. If they can't, then whatever. But putting out there that I'm going to be dating other people. Like, I don't want to just lock this in right away, which is what is kind of what's frustrating about kind of our dating culture maybe is, or maybe I don't even know if it's the dating culture, but just the concept of one person forever, the one, which I subscribed to when I was younger. But it's like once you start seeing a person, they possess you and you can't really keep exploring. It's like not many people are interested in just dating you knowing you're seeing other people. But it was a risk I had to take because I was like, I'm not just going to lock it in with one person. I'm doing things differently this time. And so, yeah, so sharing that with you when I first said, hey, I'm enjoying this, but I'm also going to let you know right up front I'm dating other people. Was that shocking to you or offensive or a little uncomfortable? Like, where did that fall?
It wasn't shocking, there should be an expectation, I think, when people meet that, hey, we're not, especially when you meet for the first time off of a dating app, I might meet 2 or 3 other people and we might go out for drinks or might go out for coffee or something like that. I think that's how things should be. You shouldn't just immediately decide, oh, I'm going to only date this one person that I just met yesterday.
Yeah, you're mine now. And
right.
That was kind of the experience that I had dating. I was like, this is it. You're it. So how long would in your mind or in your timetable, how long would you have been comfortable with me seeing other people before you were like, what are you doing? What is this?
I don't know if I have an answer for that.
What if I had been dating other people for like 6 months?
You had been when we met?
Oh, no, if we started dating and then, hey, 6 months into us seeing each other, I'm still seeing other people.
It depends on how far our relationship had progressed.
Assume that it was the same thing, only, hey, there's this other element of, I'm not sure.
I don't. Yeah, that would have been a little awkward. It would have been a little bit weird. But at the same time, I don't think that it would be possible for our relationship to have progressed to where it did in 6 months if you were still dating other people.
Yeah.
I don't think that would have been.
That would have been hard
realistic.
to really go deep with one person, but you're playing around with like other people. Like, how do you go deep with 3 or 2 people even at the same time? In my mind, some people do it, but it's exhausting for me at that point, especially because my mindset was kind of riding a slippery slope of, I would eventually like to find my person. They have to be like absolutely perfect. But I also don't want to be alone. I know. Hey, look at you. But I also want to explore. And then I'll learn more about myself exploring. But no one that I'm dating here is going to be the person. Because I plan on being single for another good 5 or 6 years. I was married for 12 years before my divorce. And so it was like, and I was, locked in at a very young age. I had never sown my wild oats. I was a very good, chaste girl. And so I kind of learned all my lessons that my friends learned at 18 when I was 38, and I was finally free to explore, and I didn't want to give that up. And so I was like, how do I balance this freedom with wanting connection and a partner? And so what was really interesting about this sex before coffee was going to, so you had questions about it, and so I was like, well, I'm just going to Google this concept and see what I find. And there's this really cool YouTube channel called Dating Beyond Borders, and it's this Canadian lady that just travels and interviews people in that culture and kind of gives insights on dating different cultures. And she did this video on why Swedes are so lonely or something like that, why it's really hard to find someone in Sweden. And she said, this is a very individualistic culture. And I was like, yeah, that speaks to me. Because I'm like, again, I was so young when I got married and had no defined sense of self because it was tied in with religion. And I just had I had no original opinion. Everything was through a lens of church and religion. And so finding myself really was a meaningful thing for me. And not wanting to give up my person, my own self, not willing to sacrifice my autonomy or my freedom, my ability to make a snap decision if I wanted to go when I wanted and leave when I wanted, was kind of not ready to share that. But yeah, so I was like, amen, an individualistic culture. That's me. Like, I'm going to live in my own space. So here were my prerequisites, not even prerequisites. Here was my wish list of a relationship. Common law only, never getting married again, living in separate houses. This was pre aha moment. And if we lived together, I would need at least a separate little house to live in on the weekends or something, and at least my own bed, separate bedrooms. And I needed to travel on my own. It was pretty much like I need to do all these things. I need to have my own space and my own separate life and a partner. That was how it was going to work. I didn't know how it was going to work. That's why I'm like, that's why I need to be single for a long time. It's going to figure itself out. And so then we started dating, and I'm like, I can be myself with this person. I can even honestly say all these things, and they're not like, I learned the value of wanting the same things. We don't have too much in common, but we think alike in certain ways, and we want the same things.
Mm-hmm. No kids, no dogs.
No kids, no dogs, no church. And politics, which we will not even go into. But for you, and this is something else you hear, guys don't like commitment. Guys don't want to commit. You wanted that.
Yeah, and I think that's a myth
Yeah.
that guys don't want commitment. I mean, because you end up and you see a lot of situations where guys want to, turn a phrase, lock it in. They want to lock it in. And I think it's a myth that men are afraid of commitment. There are certainly men out there who are afraid of commitment, but there are also women that are afraid of commitment.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a gender concept.
Yeah. But it was. I mean, you had not been married previously. And that was another thing. I thought, I need to find somebody. My future partner is going to be somebody that's already been married, because they're going to be so burned on marriage. They're not going to be interested in getting married again. They're going to be interested in some kind of common law situation. And so we can just ride this wave a little bit longer because they've been disenchanted by the whole thing.
I hadn't even really dated around a lot.
Yeah. And so that was one thing that was a little risky with us, is I'm like, you are not disenchanted with marriage. You want that. You want to experience that.
But I was also trainable.
Trainable. Explain.
Well, I wanted these things. I had never really dated around before. I had an opportunity in our relationship to learn what you wanted, and I didn't have preconceived baggage that comes along with another relationship, because different women want different things, clearly. And so I didn't have that. Other women I've been with have treated me this way, and because of this, and so maybe what I need to do is this or that. It's just I just got to learn with you.
Yeah.
What you wanted specifically.
And you get to learn about all my baggage that I'm like, oh, somebody did this before. I don't know about this, So, yeah. So for once, I'm the one traveling with the most baggage. This person that doesn't like traveling with lots of bags brought the most baggage into the relationship. Yay! So that I think the Swedish concept of living common law is sambo, and then there's sarbo, which is dating but living separately. And again, so I'm like, I feel like this culture, I was made to be Swedish. The no commitment thing. I mean, even in their culture, they want to see how you are with, like, this lady talks about how her friend was like, I want to see how this woman is with a couple of my children before I marry her. Like, commitment is like way back there.
Which is so wild to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't. I mean, I don't want children anyway. But if I did, I wouldn't want to have children with somebody that I wasn't already committed.
Yeah. It just seems. Well, I was always of the mindset of I don't trust myself to hold a commitment. I need a way out. I need it to be easy to get out of something. And so, I just, again, I had this whole concept of being this wild desert woman that would do whatever I wanted and probably never get married. And so we started dating at the end of March in 2021, and we were engaged by July of the next year. And it was like, oh, big congratulations, but like, oh, you said you were never getting married again. So here is where, and we will definitely link this episode in the show notes, but here is where the video from Dating Beyond Borders, like, put into words what I wasn't able to like express as cleanly, but after going through the Swedish culture, very individualistic, very loath to commit, very afraid of losing their freedoms and their sense of self. She wrapped up the episode with, that is for anyone to decide, no judgment, but I wonder if this concept, which is seeping more into the Western world or more worldwide, has caused us to get lost. It's like you have this buffet of choices, which makes it, with that buffet mindset, why settle with one thing when you can have all these things? There's a concept about buffets in one of my favorite books, Women Who Run with the Wolves. If you don't know what you're hungry for and you're in front of a buffet, like, none of it looks good if it's not exactly what you're really craving. Maybe you don't want to eat. Sit back then and wait for a craving to arrive and then let that guide you, instead of just options, the freedom of option guiding you, allowing what you really want. And you helped sift out, I really want someone I can be fully myself, my honest self, and not feel controlled. Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. Because I have not been able to be my honest self with people, in the past. Because, and I sure as hell wasn't letting them be their honest selves. Let's just put that out there immediately. Like, it's like if you don't allow it, it's hard to receive it too. It was just a loop. Ask my former partner. I controlled him. Ask anybody. So, yeah.
Another part that they talked about was timidity, and I've heard this a lot about Europeans, is that they are very timid when it comes to relationships. People that I've seen on talk shows like Conan or Craig Ferguson, they've talked about how men in Europe are not as sure of themselves as men in the U.S. And that leads to a lot of what we're talking about with sex before coffee, because they're too afraid. They have to get drunk in order to meet somebody and kind of sort of be themselves. Of course, I'd argue that if you're getting drunk, you're not really being yourself. But but they're getting drunk in order to loosen up so they can
kind of step outside themselves,
right.
Get out of their heads.
Right. And of course, that will start. Well, I think we will start to see that here in the States as well. And this is a difficult topic because it's a matter of men want to respect women, and that is very important. Is that men respect women, but men are unsure how to approach women in a respectful manner, because it can be difficult because of what we've talked about with sometimes if a man approaches a woman and she is not interested in him, he's creepy. But if she is interested in him and he does the exact same thing, that's exactly what she wanted.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a, I don't know if double standard is the right word. But
I mean, it is very, very biased. Like, I might call you a creep simply because I'm not interested in you, and ew, how dare you approach me? That is me speaking about myself. So talking with you, learning that about you right away gave me a lot of compassion. It softened my heart because I had a strong, like, I was one of those women that would be put off by someone I'm not interested in hitting on me, and then I would think they were creepy when that's not fair. And yet I want to be pursued. I want the guy to come to me, but don't be the wrong guy, because that's creepy. That's like, and so I think in a way you were kind of like the European man, because you instead of getting drunk to be able to approach you, that was not your style. So you just did not approach, because it's like, if I do approach, I've heard that girl talk about another guy ask her out, and that was creepy. So I don't want to be that creepy guy. And then if I try to touch her or hug her, is that going to be too forward? Like, you were kind of like stuck in this box of what you had perceived and heard and taken in. You listen, you pay attention, and to your detriment, because it kind of were like, based on this evidence, I don't want to make a move. I don't want to be that creepy guy. So I softened a lot when I was like, wow, I've been really hard. I've been very hard on people. And now I see. But going back to her saying, getting lost, if I were to admit it to myself, I would say that I felt lost in my concept of how I wanted a relationship, because it was like, how do I hold these two things? Being, let's face it, afraid of being locked in and losing my freedom and sense of self, and in a way not trusting myself to carry myself and hold myself in a relationship. I just assume once I live with someone, I'm going to be exhausted and do all the work and, basically like have no boundaries. I didn't know how to have boundaries and live with someone. And so rather than learn that, let's just live separate. This concept of, I am not ready to commit, because what if someone even more aligned is around the corner, and then I've settled? The concept of settling, waiting, and then that got to where if I really sat with it, that seemed kind of fucked up. Like, imagine I met the ideal, perfect guy. It's like, you had someone really amazing and you passed him up so that you could meet me because I might be a little better. Like, you're kind of screwed up, this was a conversation I had in my head with, okay, let's say I did meet the perfect person. They would look at my behavior as a red flag right now. So what does that say?
And also, if you met the perfect person, well, gosh, gee, there might be somebody even more perfect.
It never ends.
It never ends.
It's like the buffet. Well, what if I really did want to eat everything? You know, there's just no room for it all. It's just not possible. At some point, you decide to take yourself out, or you see what is in front of you and see that it is good and feel safe to choose. And so when she was saying her spiel at the end, that again, it's so beautiful, it really hit me. It was like, ta-da! It was a thought that crossed my mind. I think we had a conversation a year into dating. I know you checked in with me like 6 months, a year, like, how are we looking? Is this still something you want to pursue? And I think at the year mark, it was like, if I am an old lady, this is a question I ask myself with lots of crazy things I do. When you're an old lady in your bed dying, are you going to be really happy you did this, or are you going to be sad that you didn't do it? And so I thought, if I'm an old lady that made it to the end, never having fully committed or given herself to anybody, am I going to look back at this connection that we had and think, you moron, you found someone that gave you your space and sees you as your own individual and respects you and trusts you and lets you be your own person, and you find that you're able to do the same with them, and you're growing and you're learning together, and it's really beautiful, and it might not be enough, so goodbye. How would you feel if you left that? And if you said goodbye to this person because you were afraid of commitment, of losing yourself, of missing out on the buffet, would you ever be able to get to this place again with anyone else? It's like, I got so close. I just show myself that I can't do it. I don't think I'd ever be able to do it with anybody. And I think that's, in a way, it's like you fully respect the weight of a relationship. You don't fall in love. You step carefully and choose it, knowing that, there are all these mind fucks involved. And yet this person is worth it. And I'm willing to become even better at this. So, yeah. So thank you for being my person and helping me become a better person as well. I am curious, have you been surprised, or has there been anything surprising that you've learned about being in a committed relationship? Like, well, this is harder than I thought it would be, or easier or better, or like any thoughts on this experience, since it's new for you, I guess. So.
I'd say it's been smoother than I might have expected. It's been,
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not harder than I would have expected.
Mm. Were there parts of you that was afraid of the mindfuck of commitment? Like, what if I get sick of this person, or I can't handle it, or like, what if we drift apart, or none of that?
The only thing that has ever been a fear for me is, a lot of people talk about 2 years into a relationship is when,
Honeymoon.
right, that's the end of the honeymoon period, and that's when things start going downhill. And I'm like, I don't want that to happen with us, but that takes diligence and What's the word?
Intention?
Intention. That's the word. Intention. Diligence and intention.
Yeah.
I just couldn't find that word. I'm very tired. I've been all over the state today.
All over the state.
Not all over the state, but
just a good portion of the state.
Just a good few hundred miles.
You've just been in the state. Let's just say it this with this heat.
A few hundred miles between yesterday and today.
That's true. Yeah, you have gone back and forth,
Yeah.
which is interesting that you say that, because I figure, okay, if I get married, there will be rare times that he leaves town, and then I can live like it's just me again, and it will be awesome. I can live like I have my own space, my own apartment, and I have noticed that I'm used to you now and I enjoy you. And so when you're gone, I'm like, that single night alone to do whatever I want or eat whatever I want, and, kind of loses its sparkle. I'm not interested in that. And another thing is, I figured I don't sleep well with people. I need to have my own bed. And you love to cuddle. And I was like, well, shit, this is not going to. I feel bad now sleeping in the guest room when I moved in, and you were like, aw. And yet I really liked sleeping next to you. I slept good next to you, in spite of me wanting to not share a bed. And it's wonderful. It is wonderful. And so there you go. In spite of myself, you just you changed me. Yeah. And the whole honeymoon concept is just one more reason where I'm like, it's not safe to commit, because it's all going to go downhill. My experience with love is the first 2 weeks or first month are the juiciest. And then from there, it just kind of goes steadily downhill. And with us, I'm like, the beginning of our marriage, I was kind of here. And it grew and grew, and I'm still finding this deep inner strength and love. And even our conversation the other day of like, if it comes to us needing to take care of each other, like, gosh, that will be hard, but I would do it for you.
Yeah.
And that was a part that I thought, I'm not going to be able to say that to anybody. I would think in my mind, is this someone I want to take care of? No. Gosh, I'm a horrible person. I don't want to take care of my partner. But with you, it's like there's this well of grace where I'm like, I would do that for you. Again, it would be really like, whew, golly, it's kind of scary to think about wiping your partner's ass. That's terrifying. Just like it'd be terrifying to think about wiping your parents' ass. But it would be love. And that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. But you make it possible because, like you say, it's intentional. That concept of relationships are hard. It's not an accurate depiction. I think relationships require you to be intentional if you want to enjoy them. And yeah, so thanks for having this sex before coffee conversation. I find that the concept sounds great, and it's what I've enjoyed for a few years, but also it was messy and it wasn't satisfying, because I like the connection and the cutting up, and there's none of that. It's like, oh, there really does need to be a mental element, a connection, for it to be fun and interesting. So anyway, I love you. This is why I like writing, because as I'm listening to our interview, there's so many points where I'm like, oh, I really didn't drive that home clearly enough. But I'll link it in the show notes. It was a blog post that I wrote about what felt like a very real conversation that I had with my ideal person. I had this ideal person planned out in my head that I was going to meet him on the Camino de Santiago, and we were going to be like the exact same people. I've always heard that phrase. You don't want to marry someone like you. That's boring. I'm like, hell no, it's not boring. You could talk for hours about the same thing because you're both interested in these things, and you can do all these things together because you like them. That whole like finding someone different from you so it's not boring concept never resonated with me. But yeah, it was just like, wait a minute. I'm holding out for this fantasy and completely bypassing the beautiful reality that is in front of me. I'm willing to give that up and maybe one day experience this outlandish possibility. And that kind of made me realize, oh, that's kind of a red flag within myself. If I'm not willing to live in reality, I'm holding out for this fantasy. What does that say about me? I had to really look in the mirror there. And that was a big step. Having that imaginary conversation might have sounded like I was going cuckoo bananas. It was pivotal in me moving out of that fantasy, idealistic mindset, no compromise, into I'm engaging with a real person. And this is reality. This is what it's like to be human and experience relationship. Another part that I wished I would have delved more into was the old lady in my bed concept. You're really going to pass this person up for this ideal. How sad. Like, I think she would be so sad for me. You missed out on the messy, the beautiful, the strong, the vulnerable, all the things that make a relationship powerful. You're going to give that up for the possibility of something very safe and clean and guarded. I had that conversation with that old lady version of myself at that year mark where Tim and I were like, okay, we've been dating for a year. And I'm so thankful that he never pressured me to hurry up and make a decision, but it was kind of like, are we anywhere close? Because if we're nowhere close, then we might need to reassess. So these conversations with imaginary people and my old lady version of myself really helped, like, hey, wake up. The next biggest hurdle that I alluded to in the interview was this fear of not being able to hold my boundaries in a relationship. And sure enough, when I moved in with Tim, I called it the summer of the deep tired. I moved in the spring, and I just, the tired, the fatigue set in immediately because I had been so used to only living in my own space, holding my own energy. And there is something to allowing someone else into your space, to being close together like that. I didn't realize how much energy it was going to take out of me and have to like almost recalibrate myself. And I felt guilty sleeping in when he had to get up early for work. So I was like trying to make myself get up when he did. I'll just make his lunch. I'll make his breakfast. It'll take 5 minutes. I'll go ahead and do this thing for him. It'll take 5 minutes. I'll do this thing. It'll take 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. And those little things add up. But in my mind, it was like, well, just be a good person and do those things. Like, just do them. And I had to come to a point where it was like, I'm not a bitch and I'm not selfish and I'm not a jerk if I don't do these things, these small little gestures. If I don't really want to do them, they're going to drain my energy like that. And they did. I came to realize how out of touch with my body I was in relationships before Tim. And it showed me how much work I had done in learning my body. Because when I am crossing a boundary with myself that I didn't realize I had, if I say yes to something and my throat starts to feel like tight and like I'm having to swallow back almost tears, shit, I'm crossing a boundary with myself. I don't want to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. And now I have to say uncomfortable things like, I don't want to do this, or I want to sleep in. I don't want to wake up early with you. There was never any expectation from Tim for me to do those things. It was an expectation I had on myself because you're a jerk if you don't otherwise. Like, what does it really cost you? Like, come on. Oh, it costs a lot. And so here I was in the process of learning to hold my boundaries and also live with somebody else, giving myself the chance to learn that balance instead of avoiding it altogether. And it's so beautiful being on this side of like, I can trust myself now in a relationship. I trust that I'm not going to lose myself, lose my freedom, lose my opinions. It shines a big light on how dysfunctional my thought patterns were when I was first married. Felt like you don't get to have boundaries when you're married. And you have to do everything because that makes you a good person. That makes you a nice person. And you don't want to be a bitch. It's been so healing for me to live out and to see that, yes, you can, and yes, you should be your own person, hold your own boundaries. And in doing so, that allows you to hold a relationship without the boundaries, without being your own person. Oh, the relationship just is fraught. And I've seen both sides now. It's no small thing to trust yourself in a relationship. It's been such a beautiful journey. I really did not think I had commitment in me. Granted, this was months, barely, like it was like 2 or 3 months after moving out and not even divorced yet. And I was in the final month of the therapy program I was in. And I stood up and said, like, I am so afraid of being owned. And yet I want to devote myself to career or relationship. I want to know what it's like to really do those things, to really be all in. But I don't know if I'll ever be able to. And the facilitator was like, do you feel like maybe this fear of being owned is owning you? I'm like, well, shit, probably. But I don't see it changing anytime soon. Why would it that soon after a divorce or that soon after a separation, I was not in a place to just bounce into commitment at all. I needed to work through it. And it would be, that was 2017, be 4 years of not just 4 years passing, 4 years of a lot of internal work, a lot of fucking around and finding out. And to be able to sit here and say, yeah, I am able to commit. And I'm still working through those little fears. Can I still feel safe without having a window? Can I let more and more fears go? It's been a journey. I didn't just get married and ta-da! I am perfect at this. It's still been a work in progress. I still get tested. I still have to lay down boundaries. But it's all in a forward direction. It's not this like, oh, fuck. I can't do this, or I'm going to mess up. I don't know how to wrap this up other than to say it's been a very beautiful journey. Watching myself grow into a person who loves and who doesn't fear commitment, and that I don't have to be perfect right out the gate, that it can be a learning process and a journey, but that it's always moving forward. So thank you for joining me with this beautiful conversation, and we will see you next time.
New Hampshire.
Okay. Okay, what were we
Thank you so much for listening. Join us on Instagram at SWUT Podcast. That's SWUTPODCAST for further conversations, insights, and behind-the-scenes content from today's episode. And for the complete viewing experience, tune into Shall We Unpack This on YouTube. We'll see you next week.